Okay, great. So I'm just going to bring up the text on the screen, and then we'll get started. Okay, so we're ready to get started now. I hope everyone's doing okay. Let me just bring this on the screen. Here we go. Okay, so um, we're up to this paragraph where Rav Stern talks about in his introduction, and maybe hopefully we'll finish the introduction today. So I really want to get to the main stuff. Godel ha'achrayus shel mechaber sefer b'inyane Choshen Mishpat. He says the great responsibility of someone who is authoring a work on Choshen Mishpat halacha. He writes as follows, and obviously he's approaching this work with tremendous trepidation because of the responsibility involved. He writes, "V'hinei b'Sanhedrin hifligu Chazal begodel ha'achrayus v'hazihirus hamutal al hadayan." He says, if you take a look at the Gemara in Sanhedrin, the Gemara mentions the tremendous responsibility and weightiness that is and responsibility that is placed upon a judge. Ayin sham kama inyanim niskavim. Take a look, he says, at the Gemara. The Gemara talks about how difficult it is and what a responsibility it is to be a judge. Uvein hadvarim amru, and by the way, Chazal say that if a person might think to himself, look at all of this responsibility that is placed upon me, why should I do it? And this might tempt him to just walk away from it. And Chazal conclude that despite the weighty responsibility, you have no right to walk away from it if you have the ability to be a judge in your community. And amidst those things they write is la'olam yira dayan atzmo ki ilu cherev munachas lo ben yarchosav v'gehenem pesucha lo mitachtav adkan. The Gemara says, one of the things it says is that a judge should have in his vision, in his imagination, as if a sword is placed between his thighs, being ready to slice him in half, and that Gehenim is open up from beneath him, which means, like, if the floor opened up beneath you and there was a sword underneath you ready to slice you in half, you'd have to be really, really careful to make sure not to fall through. And in the course of falling through, you'd be sliced in half. So it's a frightening image, but this essentially is what a judge has to be thinking about, because if he says the wrong thing, if he paskins the wrong way, that's where he'll go to Gehenna potentially. B'dayin shemachayev mamon shelo kedin nefashot tehu nitva. He says any judge who improperly rules and causes someone to have to pay when they really don't have to pay, he is going to be called to task, not just for the money that he caused the loss of, but he's going to be called to task for all of the lives that he destroyed in the process. And Chazal are actually very, very cognizant of the fact that there is a domino effect that takes place whenever a person creates a financial disruption in a person's life. V'im zeh amur b'psak din yechidi, kol shegein b'mechaber sefer b'divrei mishpat sheb'psakav magim l'rabim shavadei achayis gedola ma'od. And so Rav Stern writes that if this is true, when just dealing with an individual litigant that comes before you, then imagine how much more it's true when a person is embarking on writing a sefer that will provide guidelines and psak halacha for hundreds and thousands of people. The Rambam had already written in an epistle to a community The davar shechokek adam al sefer roi lo lachzor alav mitechila elef pe'amim. That anything that a person commits to writing should be reviewed 1,000 times before sent to the publisher. Ubifrat b'sefer ha'osek binyani dinu mishpat. And this is certainly true when it comes to a work that is not just sermonic in nature, but rather deals with issues of law. And who can really say in today's world that he has sufficient knowledge to be able to present all of the halacha? Halo kevar b'yamim hakadmonim matzinu b'rishonim shekasva deha'idin alo b'ki kol kach b'dinin. He says, we find in earlier days that our sages said in the medieval period already that they reflected on their own times and they said, nowadays we aren't that well versed in halacha, in Choshen Mishpat halacha. V'hosif al zeh haradvaz v'omar di'im bizmano shel harash b'kacha kol shekein bizmano. And the Radvaz, picking up on that comment that was made by Rabbi Shlomo ben Aderet, who lived just a century after the Rambam, if he was able to say that in the 13th, 14th century about his own generation, that in his own generation they're not so well versed on areas of law. The Radvaz, who lives in the 16th, 17th century, said that's even more true. So he says, and if the Radvaz could say that about himself in the 16th, 17th century, that even more in his time, there was a dearth of knowledge, then certainly what are we going to say in the 20th century when this work is being written, how lacking we are in this knowledge. He says, if that was true in a generation of great knowledge of Torah, like in the generation of the Rashba and the Radvaz, that they could say about themselves that we know so little, well then certainly in our generation, which is far inferior to those prior generations, Yasmi di Yasmi Dara Basra, we are the orphans of orphans, the last of the generations. V'gam achar shekvar lomad ha'adam es yisodos ha'halacha mehagemara u'mei poskim rishonim v'shulchan aruch v'nosei kelim. He says, and let me go further. Let us assume that a person has sufficiently filled his mind with a full comprehensive knowledge of the foundations of Jewish law, using the Gemara, using the poskim, using the medievalists, using the Shulchan Aruch and all of its commentaries. Let's say you've gone through all of that. Mikol makom kishemagia davar chadash enitzrach ledamot milta lemilta alulim chas v'shalom likashel bazeh. He says, but that still doesn't necessarily mean that you're a qualified posek, because what you need is one final ingredient, which you will not find in a book. And that is the ability to be creative and imaginative enough to apply the case law, the case that you've read about in the Sefer, and apply it to the real life situation that comes before you. And not always, and not only not always, but almost always, the case that comes before you will have slight variations from the case that you've read about in the poskim, in the book. He says this is a very, very subtle issue. It's a very, very fine and subtle matter. The skill to be able to properly compare the case law that you've learned about and to apply it to real life situations. Ukechut hasa'ara, go to the next page, yafrid bein ha'isr lehaheter. He says, and a hair's breadth sometimes is the division between that which is prohibited and that which is permitted, based on the subtlest of difference in the scenario that is presented to the person who has to make the decision. The harbe shimush talmidei chachamim, the siyata dishmaya nitzrach shahadinyon ya'ale yafeh. And there is much servicing of scholars. I'll get to that term in just a minute. Shimush Talmidei Chachamim. You need a lot of that. You need a lot of experience with a teacher. And you also need a lot of divine aid. You need siyata dishmaya in order to successfully apply what you've learned to the real life scenario that is presented before you. Shelo nichshel chas v'sholom b'dvar halacha. That a person should not stumble and fail in making the proper conclusions in Jewish law. If you go down to footnote Yud Tes, he writes as follows. This is the last footnote of the introduction. He says, Ayin b'chidushei chasam sofer. He says, I refer you to some of the commentary of the Chasam Sofer on the Gemara. And he writes, Shekasa v'zeloshano. He writes as follows. Aval, heve yodeya, ki ikar shimush al talmidim eitzel rabam, hu ledamot milta lemilta. He says, there's a phrase that we find in the Gemara, which is to be medameh milta lemilta, to be mishamesh talmidei chachamim, to service scholars. What does it mean to service scholars? It doesn't mean to bring them a cup of coffee. To service scholars means to be in their presence for a certain span of time, such that you have gained a proper amount of understanding in the way that they think, in the way that they process information, and in the way that they communicate their knowledge. So that no one can think that they can become a Talmud Chacham by just learning from a Sefer. It doesn't usually work that way. You actually have to have a Rebbe that can provide you with a living example of what it means to be a Talmud Chacham. And if you don't have a living example, you may learn a wealth of information, but to apply that wealth of information to real life, you won't be able to do effectively because you didn't have a teacher who helped you understand how to make that transition. And the way that a Rebbe does that, when you're Mishamish Talmidei Chachamim, so the Chasam Sofer makes that very point. He says, Ikar Shimush HaTalmidim Eitzel Rabam Hu Ledamos Milsa Lemilsa. That what is the greatest skill that a person acquires by servicing Talmidei Chachamim and habituating himself with them to learn from them? It is this skill to be able to apply the case law to the real life scenario. B'zel lashon harash huva beis Yosef b'divrei Ramaskal b'Yerodei Siman Reish Mem Beis b'zel lashona. And now he quotes the Rush, which is cited by the Beit Yosef, as follows. V'yesh lomer achshav nami ein kol ma'isa ba b'gemara ela shemedama milsa lemilsa. So the Rush says that the case that is coming before you is most of the time not going to be the case that is discussed by the Gemara. Not all cases can potentially all permutations you can never have all the possible permutations reviewed thoroughly and exhaustively by the Gemara. And therefore it's necessary to take the case of the Gemara and apply it to the case that comes before you. And there's always the concern that you're making an inapt analogy between what the case law is and what the real life situation that you're dealing with. And the Chasam Sofer continues and he says, it's for that reason that in the Beis Medrash in our towns, when a person comes up with a novel idea in halacha, we say, is it gleich or ungleich, which is Yiddish for pirush dome o eno dome. Is it a good analogy or is it not a good analogy? Is it comparable or is it incomparable? Shahadimyon ola yofa el eno elo yofa. V'lihios hasfaros amukos v'dakos kechut hasayra l'chalik bein zelazeh. And he says, and by virtue of the fact that many times the logic is very deep, and the subtle differences and distinctions that exist in the various aspects or details of the halacha are very, very fine and subtle in being able to distinguish between one and another. And only through the ability to discern differences of shade in situations will a person be able to successfully answer questions. He says that's why a Rebbe was always brought in to help in this particular area. He says, because many times the students might think that the case law is exactly analogous to the situation that they are facing in real life, and they would come before their Rebbe, and the Rebbe would demonstrate to them that there are subtle distinctions between what is written in the Psak Halacha and what they are trying to adjudicate upon in real life. And the Rebbe would therefore show his students the very, very fine crack in the flaw in their logic, in their desire to make the analogy. And that was the primary function of the Rebbe, which was to show his students the very, very fine differences from one idea to another. That which, at first glance, in the minds of the students, which had not been finely trained, that it seemed to them that the cases were exactly the same. And that is the only way that a student who is an aspiring scholar would really be able to know truthfully how to paskin halacha. And it's for that reason that it's necessary for a person to have proper shimush of Talmidei Chachamim in order to be able to become a proper posek. And therefore he writes, going back to the second line on page 8, V'lachein hineni mevakesh mikol lomed b'sifri, shelo yismoch al chidushai. He says, therefore I hereby request from anyone studying this text that I've written, that you should not completely rely just on my novel ideas, but rather you should take the ideas that I present that are my own novelties, and you should put them through the furnace of examination. Lishkol hadvarim b'moznei hapelas v'iyun hayashar, to weigh them very carefully and through careful examination. And if your conclusion is that I have erred in an area of halacha, please notify me, give me a call, send me a letter, so that I can correct myself for future editions. And we now go to the part of the introduction where he gives his thanks to all of his teachers, and he thanks the Vishnitzer Rebbe, because Rav Stern was from the Vishnitzer Hasidim, and he also wants to give his thanks to the Shevet Halevi, which I believe was Rav Vosner, if I'm not mistaken, who also was a Rebbe of his and taught him Psak Halacha. He gives thanks to Rabbi Chiel Brand and Rav Avram Vaxberger and Rabbi Avram Chaim Weiss and the other people who have. He gives thanks to his wife, his Rebbitzin, who has come to his aid, and so so we'll skip all of the details of that. And then he writes finally over here at the end of the introduction, V'zos lemodai shebahadfasa zu shel hashulchan aruch harav huchnasu b'chazara kol hashmatos hatzenzora. He says, I want you to know that over the years there were certain editions of the Shulchan Aruch Harav which had errors in them and which had omissions in them because of the censor's pencil. The Shulchan Aruch Harav was subject to censorship, as were so many other Sfarim that were published in the 18th and even the 19th centuries, that were carefully gone over by censors to make sure that there was nothing that was viewed as seditious in these works. Because remember, when you're writing a book on civil law, you have to be very careful that you're not going to cross the line of the authorities, who basically say, who gives you the right to take the law in your own hands? If a person has a legal matter, he cannot go up against the government's ruling on this law. Today, we find the same kind of contentious controversy with certain communities, Muslim communities, which seek autonomy and which to rule under Sharia law. And then, you see the pushback is that the other people in society say, you shouldn't go according to Sharia law, you should go according to the law of the land. And so one of the issues that we're going to have to deal with is under what conditions do we say Dina de Malchusa Dina, that the law of the land is the law, and under what conditions do we ignore the law of the land because of other overriding concerns? Especially when it comes to monetary law, many times we do say Dina de Malchusa Dina, but there are certain exceptions to that, which we'll see. So therefore, the Rav Shulchan Aruch was subject to censorship. So he wants to let us know that I have restored, based on careful study of original documents, what was originally in the text, and we've restored all of the omissions that had been taken out because of the censors. That because of the censors, whole paragraphs and sentences were taken out. I've also made sure that we've corrected other, previous editions had errors in them, errata. V'nosaf lahanal kol haprakim shel HaShulchan Aruch Harav chulku v'sumnu lefi seder aleph beis l'tovas hama'ayinim. He says, and also all of the chapters, the topics within the chapters, I've organized an index using the order of the aleph beis to make it more accessible to the reader. And I believe he's referring to the index that he has in the back. Let me just see. Well, he has a general index in the back, but he also has a table of contents at the beginning, which we'll see on the next page. So I'm not sure what he's referring to over here when he talks about the different sections. I guess he's broken it down according to the chapters based on. Basically, the Shulchan Aruch Harav's Choshen Mishpat has 13 sections. He says, I've broken it down into those 13 sections, assigning a number to each one of those sections. Davar shelo hayakayim b'chol hadfasas ad hayam, something that had not been done in any other edition until today. Kamol kain lahakol salom dim suju hilchos halvaos ve'edus b'sof hasefer. I've also, in order to make things a little bit easier, I've organized the laws of loans and testimony, the laws of how to be a proper witness at the end of the book, at the end of the Sefer, even though maybe in the Rav Shulchan Aruch original edition, it was earlier in the Sefer. U'b'tzeisim in akrach, efros kapai el Hashem nosein haTorah, and as I leave this work, I'm going to spread out my hands in thanks to the giver of the Torah, to Hashem. U'pieftach batfila va'atira lenora alila, and I will open up my mouth with prayer and supplication to He who is the exalted. Sheyigala einai b'torasenu hakdosha leha'ira, that He should open my eyes to the holy Torah and illuminate it. Shelo ikashel b'dvar halacha, that I do not stumble in matters of law. V'yitain b'libi yiraso ve'ahavaso hatahora, and that God should place in my heart His fear and His love in its purest form. V'yakuyam bi shifti beveis Hashem kol yemei chayai lachazos v'noam Hashem, and may God, you fulfill within me that you place, as King David said, place me in the house of God my entire life to see the splendor of Hashem. V'lo tamush haTorah mipi umipi zari v'zer zari ad olam. And also, God, my prayer is that the Torah not leave my lips, nor the lips of my children and my children's children for eternity. Ve'einenu tir'ena b'vinyan ha'hechal v'ha'azara. And my prayer also is that our eyes should be witness to the construction of the temple, uvikibut se pizura ha'olam l'tzion berina v'shira, and may the scattered sheep, referring to the people of Israel, be all ingathered from the exiles, returning to Zion with great song and praise. B'hitgalot kavod Hashem aleinu b'mheira b'yameinu amen. When God reveals His great glory upon us, may it come speedily in our days. Amen. That concludes the introduction. With the remaining time that we have, any questions or comments at this point? No. So let's, if not, let's take a look at the table of contents. Tochen hasimanim hamafteach lefi arachim nimtza b'sof hasefer, and he writes that the index by subject will be written at the end of the book. The first chapter that we're going to be looking at is Dinei Mechira, the laws of sales, Kinyanim purchases, Matana gifting, Yerusha inheritance, Shalichut, proxyship, and Apotropos custodianship, all having to do with financial exchanges between one party and another. Second chapter, Dinei Onaas Mamon Gnevas Das and Onaas Devarim, the laws of Ona'ah with money, meaning overcharging or underpaying to an unsuspecting other party. Gnevas das is deception in monetary issues. And onas devarim is the third topic, which means oppressive speech outside the realm of finance, where the Torah prohibits, there's a prohibition of ona'ah that doesn't just apply to oppressing someone financially, but also applies to oppressing someone verbally. Third chapter, Dine Midos, Mishkalos, Havkoas, Sha'arim, the laws of weights and measures, and the law of establishing market prices. Siman Dala, Dine Aveda Umetzia Pikadon, the laws of lost objects and what you do when you find a lost object. The law of collateral that is left in a person's possession, how you're supposed to treat it. Siman Hey, Dine Ovre Derachim, Perika Uteina Tsar Balechayim, the laws of travelers, the law of helping someone load and unload when he is in the process of moving, and the prohibition of afflicting pain on other living creatures. That's also included because, and the reason why that's included in Choshen Mishpat is because it's not only a moral law about the sensitivity that one must have to God's creations, but there's also financial aspects involved as well, that because this is a financial instrument, an animal, you have to know how to properly treat it. Siman Vav, Dine Hefker, Kivush Melech, Zechias, Hefker, Umetzia, Hasagas Gavul, the laws of what is Hefker, the laws of eminent domain when a government can take possession of a property, how to take possession of something that has been declared ownerless, and the laws of encroachment. Siman Zayin, Dine Gezelo Geneva, the laws of theft and robbery. Oshek, Lo Sachmod, the laws of, the Torah says you may not oppress your fellow. The laws of coveting, which the Torah says you're not allowed to covet. Hashavas Gezela, returning something that you stole. Kiniya Meganav, purchasing stolen goods. Dine Moches, the laws of taxation. Dine de Malchusa, the law of the land is the law. Kiniya Meuman, purchasing from an artisan. Kiniya Vekabolas Pikado Minashim Uktanim, purchasing from women and children. I Avid Inish Din Lanafshe, what would be the law if post facto a person made his own decision rashly, and how does he rectify that? Nischalfu Kelef Beveis HaMerchatz, what the law is if your object, you accidentally took someone else's umbrella, let's say, or raincoat. Misachek Bekuvia, the law of someone who is a gambler. and Meitzer Shechziku Bo Rabim, and how to deal with a border of your property that has been taken possession of by the public. And there are many other halachas which we don't have time to go into, but that we'll probably start our text in Mirz Hashem tomorrow. I will stop it here. Questions or comments at this point? Anyone?
How do we get a hard copy of the text?
Well, the difficulty is that this text is out of print, unfortunately. I've looked around and called around, and I even called Beagle-Eisen a few weeks ago, which is the number one purveyor of Sfarim in the world, at least in North America, and they couldn't find it for me either. So that's. But you. Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
But in the ad, it gave the text. It gave an email address to send to get the text. By PDF.
So did you email Warren?
I did. It didn't work. Snoozle.
Warren? Is Warren still with us?
It's not. The last letter is not an L. It's a 1. Is he?
It's a 1. Okay, I'll send it today. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is he?
Yes.
Is he?
Hi, Brian.
You can just call me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll email you the text, and it's the first 20 pages of this text, and we'll break it down by 20 pages as a PDF. And then, so I'll send it. And then what you'll do when you speak to Warren is you'll join the WhatsApp group, which has the PDF on it also. Okay?
Okay, good. Thank you. Sorry for the disruption.
Okay, everyone. Take care.